In this video, I'm not going to be talking so much about what growing media you should be using, whether it's Happy Frog, Ocean Forest, Coast of Maine, Sunshine Mix number 4, Pro Mix. All these things are different soil compositions from cocoa, bag of peat moss, pit moss. Some of them are closer to a soil substance with some humic layer, perlite, vermiculite. So there's so many amendments. So I'm not going to get into that. I'm going to get specifically into my dry amendment feed schedule. It's something that I give to all my clients. If you're a soil grower and you come to me, I will normally get my growers to go down this direction just because it's easier, it's more consistent, you get more yield. I'm consistently see terpenes and cannabinoid concentrations as well as profiles increases. So that's the direction normally I go for dry amendments. Synthetic fertilizer is different. When you're doing synthetic fertilizer, I would normally recommend and encourage people to create a relationship with bacteria and salts. And then I teach them the ideal environment to use salts in biology. And I teach them the parameters so that they don't make the bacteria dormant and start relying on 100% on salt fertilizers. So in this video specifically, we're going to get into my feed schedule for dry amendments and what products I use and recommend. And also, this is just normally how we get started. Over time, I will normally get the client to be ordering, their bigger clients, larger quantities because it's cheaper. But these are what I normally will copy the dry amendments that I'm purchasing as sourcing from local resources that has no brand name. I'm copying it off of the down to earth line. So what am I using? I'm using the 444, and they've changed it recently to I think it was a 462 or something, but it's their all-purpose fertilizer. And the reason why the numbers change over time is because wherever they're sourcing their materials from, year after year, the concentrations of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium adjust actually in these dry amendments. So they have to test it, and as long as it's within the parameters, they can keep saying it's a 444. But if it changes the parameters, then they have to change it to a 462. But you're looking for the all-purpose down-to-earth bag. Then you're going to be looking for their down-to-earth alfalfa, the down-to-earth kelp, and I always butcher this, but the langbonite. Then we use drops of balance to treat the water, the BAM for the bacteria, and then we use mycos for the endofungi, and you only use that during transplanting. And then for my integrated pest management solution, I use Organoshield. This is literally the only thing you ever need to use. You don't need to buy anything more, and you are going to be getting incredible yields and quality if you can get these types of dry amendments. If not, sometimes select nutrients is all that's available. So how do we use these? Okay, so when you turn each of these boxes of dry amendment to the back, they're going to recommend 1 to 2 tablespoons per gallon of soil you're using. So for example, if you're using a 10-gallon size pot, you would take 10 gallons and you would times it by the 1 to 2 tablespoons per gallon. So you would get 10 times 2. Let's say you're using a higher amount, and that would end up being 20 tablespoons of that specific dry amendment. I believe the kelp, the alfalfa, and the 444 use all tablespoons. The langbonite, I believe, uses teaspoon, 1 to 2 teaspoons per gallon. So for the alfalfa and kelp, those are both phenomenal growth hormones that are really ideal for vegetative growth, seedlings, transition, but they're not so ideal as you go into flowering. And so how do you adjust your dry amendments? Well, initially you're going to amend your soil, and you'll be using the 2 tablespoons per gallon for the all-purpose, the kelp, and the alfalfa. Then you're going to use the 1 teaspoon per gallon for the langbonite. And so let's say you're using a 10-gallon size pot, you'd use 20 tablespoons of the all-purpose, 20 tablespoons of the kelp, and 20 tablespoons of the alfalfa. And then you would end up using, because you're going to use the 1 teaspoon per gallon of the langbonite, you'd use 10 teaspoons of langbonite. And that's what you'd use to amend your soil. Also, a lot of people will transplant up, so they'll use a 1-gallon size pot and then a 3 and then a 10 or something normally. So if you're going to use 10 gallons, you actually have to amend your soil for all 10 gallons initially, even though you're not going to use 10 gallons. You might use 1 gallon, but every single time you transplant, you're going to be sourcing from the 10 gallons of soil you amended in the beginning. Then, after you have finished your transplanting, because normally that happens pretty quick within 4 weeks after popping your seeds, or you finished most of your transplanting within a month, maybe 5 weeks max. So during that entire time, you're sourcing from soil that's already been amended. So from the last time you transplant, because you're transplanting into nutrients, you're going to top dress your soil normally 3 weeks or so after your final transplant. So your first time you top dress, you're going to, because your plants are still in, more often than not, in vegetative growth, you're going to top dress with your all-purpose, your alfalfa, and your kelp. You're going to still use, because they recommend 1 to 2 tablespoons for the kelp, alfalfa, and the all-purpose. You're still going to use the 2 tablespoons per gallon for the all-purpose, and that's never going to change. You're always going to be using the higher amount of the all-purpose. For the kelp and the alfalfa, because those are growth hormones, and you're getting closer to transitioning to flowering, you're going to back those down to the 1 tablespoon per gallon. And then for the langbonite, you're still going to use the 1 teaspoon per gallon regimen. And you're using a 10-gallon size pot, right? So how soy biology works, you might feel like you're adding too much or a lot as you're doing this. But the cool thing about soy biology is that it controls how much nutrients it's breaking down on a daily basis. So you can really never over-fertilize. You can go to dry bags and build up the salts after the bacteria breaks them down, but you can't over-fertilize with dry amendments. Now, unless the dry amendments are very water soluble, like blood meal, for example, which I normally stay away from unless you have a very long veg time, which again, we're not going to get into that too much. So most crops are going to grow for about 3 months. So your top dressing is only going to be happening, you're going to amend your soil initially. So that's once. Then you're going to top dress, and that's going to be 1 month after your final transplant. So that's going to be, let's say, into month 1, maybe into week 6. Then you're going to top dress again 3 to 4 weeks after that. And then you might top dress one more time. So you're only top dressing a couple times through your entire growth cycle. So when you top dress, I already talked about how you start to reduce the kelp and alfalfa. So about a month after that, you're going to use only the all-purpose, still at 2 tablespoons per gallon, and the langbonite. And so let's say you're 4 weeks away from harvesting. You're on week 4 into flowering. Well, at this point, now you can start increasing the langbonite. Your range is 1 to 2 teaspoons per gallon. So you might go to depends upon how big your plants are, really. If your plants, for some reason, stay short and squatty, you might want to stay around the 1 to 1.5 teaspoons per gallon of soil for the langbonite. Let's say the plants are really big, you might want to take it all the way up to 2 teaspoons per gallon of the langbonite. You also have to take into consideration how the plants are responding, right? If they're showing signs of excess phosphorus and potassium, I already got into a video, the types of calciums video, that breaks that down pretty well of how to identify that. Or you are seeing deficiencies of certain things. This is where when you get closer to your next transplant, you might increase it. So remember, you have a range of 10 gallons of soil. So you, instead of giving them, let's say we're talking about langbonite, let's say you give them only 1 teaspoon per gallon. So you'd give them 10 teaspoons. Right. Well, if your plants are showing signs of excess phosphorus from potassium, and it will be subtleties before it gets into the extreme of it being an excess phosphorus or toxicity or deficiency issue. But if you pay attention to the subtleties, during these dry amendments, you could decide whether to only put, let's say, 5 teaspoons. So you're only adding in 1/4 of what you could be adding. Let's say they're showing signs of deficiency as well, and you're 4 weeks into flowering, you might want to take it up to the heavier amount and give the full amount of the top dress. During this entire time, you are watering with 1 ml of drops balance. You're watering with the BAM. We recommend to ferment your BAM to make it go longer. And the mycos, you already used that during transplanting. You have to use it when you use it for transplanting, you stop using it. And that's how you work your dry amendments through your entire process. And then after you harvest, you re-amend your soil again with the original 444 or the all-purpose, the kelp, alfalfa, and some langbonite. And you just keep redoing it. At times, there might be too much of one thing, and the plants are going to tell you about that. And so you adjust the following grow. And that's why when with all my clients, it's never just like, this is how you do and this is how you get it done, right? And through every grow, we are discussing deficiencies and toxicities and what the plants are showing us, because before you harvest, depending upon how the plants are doing, it's telling us also how much we might need to re-amend our soil the following time and make any small adjustments. But initially, that's the general gist. And it's where when we go through grow by grow, I'm able to show you these subtleties in the plants. And then after a couple grows, you can then identify them for yourself. So let me know if this video was helpful.